Well, welcome back, everybody, to the Black Doctors Talk podcast. I am your host, Dr. Christopher Holmes, and I am here with another amazing member of the Black Doctoral Network. Today, I am joined by Dr. Maria Green, who is a director, HR administrator for a nonprofit in Maryland in that DMV area, as well as an associate adjunct professor in the School of Business, a human resource program at the University of Maryland Global Campus. She is a qualified administrator for the Intercultural Development Inventory, IDI, and an entrepreneur. It's like, okay, where else can she fit something else to do in her life? She's doing it all, guys. I want you guys to welcome Dr. Maria Green.
Hello, everyone. I am excited about participating in this podcast and you learning more about me.
Well, listen, she is such a quiet storm, everybody, but I can't wait for her to share her story and her journey with you. So, Dr. Green, we're going to start by asking this question. Talk to us about young Maria. Who was she as a young girl and as a young woman? And she's still young. Let me say that. She's still a young woman.
Still young. So it's interesting. Early on, when I was a kid, I knew I wanted to help people. So my first career choice, around 6, was that I wanted to be a nun. And then, there was a small problem. My grandfather explained that we were not Catholic, and so that was not a possibility. So then, a little later, I decided I wanted to be a therapist. Not that much later. I had stayed inside a lot, so I had a lot of time to think as a child. But I realized that I just wanted to help people. And so, and then in elementary school, one of the things that I, noticed and all, was, there were always, kids who, may not have been a part of a group or were treated like outsiders. And I think I felt that way. And so I was able to channel that into helping people feel included, and so I would say that's who I was, wanting to help others, even as a young kid.
And did you see that growing up? Like, did your mom or your grandmother or maybe other family members or like big helpers? And that's where that you pulled that from?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time with my grandparents. My mother was working, and so my grandmother, was in the missionary society at church. So she, helped in the community. She one ministry within that she was involved in, helped, dress dolls for children who were in the hospital, and so they had to, the clothing had to be, designed a certain way, and so I saw that, as a very small child, but also the work that she did within the church. And my grandfather was an AME minister, and so yeah, this was just part of my life. So.
Oh yeah, church every Sunday is what I hear.
Sunday during the week, Saturday, yes, that was fun times. But fortunately, I had a sister who was also there along for the ride, so we were together with this experience.
Awesome. So I talked a little bit about in the intro all the things that you do, but talk a little bit about how that desire to help was now or is now part of what you do in terms of your work.
So with human resources, that's what we do. We help employees, we help managers to work through problems or issues that they're having at work. And so it actually was a natural progression. And I went into human resources literally because I wanted to go back to school and I wanted somebody else to pay for it. I did not expect to stay in human resources. And so I applied for a job at Georgetown University in their benefits department. And, I worked there for 6 years, went back to school, and I was going to be a therapist. That's what I was going to do. But along the way, I also went through 2 9-month certificate programs in training and organizational development. And I realized I wanted to stay in human resources. And part of that experience was just learning to develop communications to help, or I should say communication materials to help employees understand processes, understand benefits, et cetera. And so I just really like doing that. And again, it was all about helping people understand things that they needed in order to do their job. And so that has translated into an entire career. And I am an introvert, so that helps me hear what people are really saying, and pull all that information together, to see, well, what do we need to communicate better in HR? So that's what, although I'm an HR director, I really feel like my role is really how do we better communicate, processes and programs that help employees. So
that sounds a little bit like therapy to me. So
it is definitely, that's exactly. So I was able to, translate a counseling degree into, coaching managers and employees. So,
yeah, most
so the
definitely.
degree did that. My master's degree did not go to waste. Definitely have used it.
That's awesome. I do want you to talk a little bit. I know you talked about the employees, but let's talk specifically about those in leadership and the skills they need. And you talked about communication. And I just had this conversation recently with someone about supporting the training of leaders in organizations in order to, one, create a smooth, safe learning environment, but also one that's productive. So how do you work specifically, or what are your goals when you're working with leaders?
So the issue really is, I think for some leaders, they go from being an individual contributor to a leader. One organization where I worked with, the leaders actually went from, being hourly employees into managers. And so they really did not have the skills that they needed in order to make that transition. And in some cases, they were supervising their former peers, which is another challenge. And so one of the things that that particular organization, we actually developed this framework for what managers needed to know. And communication is a big part of it, but there's also understanding what the organizational processes are and policies and procedures. And I think that learning those things are the core of what new managers need to know. But I would say communication is the biggest, that's the biggest skill that they can develop. And it is learning just to listen to what employees are saying, learning how to have those crucial conversations with employees. And so this one organization where I work that I just referenced, the training director and I actually facilitated crucial conversations training. We went to the training and then we actually facilitated that. But that particular training just helps leaders, put their feelings aside to get to the heart of what the issue is. Because I think that's the issue, is our feelings are involved in every conversation that we have. So if someone says something that we may think is criticism, we take it personally rather than looking at this as a growth opportunity. And so that training actually talks about getting to the heart of what the person is saying and our own feelings and moving past that so that we can have productive conversations. So I think if leaders learn nothing else, it is how to communicate with employees, their direct reports, and even up, to how to communicate, up the chain, because that will make them successful. So I think that's what I always focus on is, just what you say, how you say it,
So in all of this great work, something in you said, Maria, it's time to get the doctorate. What led you down this journey, so to speak?
So I knew I was going to always go to school and go back to school to get a doctorate. When I was, in elementary school, like maybe second or third grade, my uncle went back to school to get his doctorate in early childhood education. So this was always going to be, this was a goal of mine, from like the 70s. However, I worked in multiple places, and one of the trends that I noticed is that, women weren't very nice to each other at work. And it's not all women, but there's always a set of women who are bullies. And so I saw that in multiple organizations. And so I started, researching, workplace bullying among women and just workplace bullying in general. And then I decided, I really want to study this more and help employers deal with this because it can, bullies can limit a person's career. They can sabotage efforts. They can do so many things. And so that's when once I had something I really wanted to study, I said, okay, it's time to go back. And all those years before, it was like, well, yes, I want to go back. But, this was just, in 2018, it was the right time. I'd seen enough of this in multiple workplaces that I said, I need to understand this better.
Wow. I love that. Now, we're going to talk about this research a little bit later, because I know it has led you into doing some other stuff on your own, which for those that are doing research and you're in the program, that's what I want you to be thinking. How do I transition this into something real, right? Something that I can continue this. I didn't spend, for some of us, 5-6 years on this thing, and I'm dusting it off, right? This needs to be something that is a living document that's breathing in your everyday life. So you're in the program. I know there were challenges. How did you get to the finish line?
So, one of the things that helped is really I had a village, and my village was, my uncle and aunt. And because they both had pursued doctorates and earned doctorates. And then my aunt's sister, once I was interested, she'd call me every few months to see how things were going. And she's a faculty member at an HBCU. So she, was always trying to encourage me. And then I had 2 cohort mates, initially just one that I knew, and we had several classes together. So we would talk, and we worked on one project together. So we would talk occasionally, and she helped me through even just some challenges I had in understanding, certain, concepts or what was actually required. And then by the time I got to the dissertation phase, I had, my dissertation advisor really helped push it through. She gave me a lot of confidence in even what I was going to research, because I pivoted from bullying among women to microaggressions. And she was the person who actually said, because I wanted to study unconscious bias, and and I think with all the social unrest that was going on, that was around the time when I was getting ready to study, start my studies. And this is really what I'm more interested in. And so, she just said, well, what about microaggressions? And then I thought about it, like, okay, let me think about that for like a day. And then I did, and I researched what I could, and I was like, that's it. But she was the person who encouraged me, even up to when I was about to defend my dissertation. I was nervous, and I was like, what if I get asked questions I don't know? And she I had texted her this, and she called me, and she's like, you are the expert on your research. You are ready to do this. And she was also the person who early on said, when we first established, the relationship, and she became my advisor, she said, what I see you, doing is being a DEI consultant when you're finished this process. So she saw this vision early on. And so that was, that was definitely very helpful to have her by my side. But also another classmate, we, so I had two classmates, and we would, text each other and have these calls when when we were feeling like we just couldn't go any further. So
So if you had to give one piece of advice to somebody who is embarking on the journey, or they're thinking about being on this journey, what would you say to them?
I would say that you need to definitely pursue it, but you do it so that you can contribute to your field and so that you can help others. You don't do it to have a notch on your belt, because it's a lot of work.
Yes.
It's a lot. It's an unbelievable amount of work, but it is worth it. So
yeah. I always say when you get the doctorate, it comes with responsibility, because now that you know more, you are now responsible for impacting more. And
yes.
so, like you said, we are now, we being, Black educated doctorals, graduates, we are now responsible for our community to make sure that they have access to information, and that equity is a real thing in various spaces. And so with that, I want to transition into your dissertation. I know that you went into looking at the impact of microaggressions in US-based workplaces. So I want to talk about how has that shown up in your current work as an HR administrator. You have all this research now under your belt. You are so much more knowledgeable about just a field, or that particular field. And then I want you to talk about how has that now translated into the work that you do as a consultant.
Okay, so in the workplace, it has helped me actually just see, I'm, now that I have all this information in my head, it's like I can provide solutions to other organizations, even the organization where I work, and where I was working when I finished my research. It helped me better able, to be better able to identify, this is what's going on here, and this is how we need to handle this, and provide recommendations to leadership. And so, and I have, and so it also, I would say, made me brave enough to speak about what's going on and how that is harmful to the organizational culture and climate in organizations, and why it is a real issue. And I think, what I found out in conducting my research is there were some people who just didn't even know that they'd experienced microaggressions. They didn't have the word for it. And so, through training, they were able to identify, yes, I experienced microaggressions, or in some cases, those people who were the aggressors realizing, oh, I didn't realize this is what I was doing, and I need to do better. And so, again, I think, in the workplace, when something happens, I do actually call it what it is, and and say, well, this is what's going on, and this is what this is about. And a person may or may not be aware that they have said something that's harmful to someone else. So one of the things that, my advisor had encouraged me to do, and even just it being in the UMGC program, is they encouraged us to, speak at conferences. And so during my studies, I got to speak at the Engaged Management Symposium last year. They had a doctoral summit. And so, and that helped with me going into my dissertation. And also, one of the things that UMGC had every residency is they had this presentation. So doctoral students were presenting their research either in basically a poster, as we were leading up to, the dissertation phase. And then as dissertation students, we presented our research at this program called SOARS. And so, and that was just within the school, but that helped me be able to present my research. And so I started applying or submitting proposals right after I graduated. And so and then UMGC also asked us to help with a partnership. My business school asked us to work with DC government on presenting workplace solutions. So I was able to present to DC government and their DC government HR leaders. They had a conference and I presented my research there. And that was very helpful to participants. Again, people were saying, I didn't know that that's what that was, and now I know. And then I also presented at the College University of Personnel Association HR conference. And after speaking at that conference, there was an attendee who kept in contact with me because she said, we're having some issues at my university. And so she just, said, I really would like to work with you. And fortunately, other members of the university had attended that presentation as well. And so something was going on at their university. And so they asked me to come work with them. And so right now I have one contract that I'm working on, but I'm going to provide microaggression training and civility training for them as well. And so that's one of the benefits, of the research that I conducted, but also the training I received as a doctoral student.
So there is power in presenting.
Yes, there is, and getting very comfortable with your presenting, because even as a student, by the time you get to the dissertation, you want to be prepared. So schools have the poster presentations. The BDN has a poster presentation as well, though. Yes. I encourage people to participate in those to get, talk about your research as much as possible so that you're prepared for your dissertation, but also prepared for life after the dissertation, because there is life.
Yes. So have you settled into the title of an expert?
Yes, I guess I am, but I think there are other experts out there, but the interesting thing about my research was that, when I was conducting it, they had a lot of solutions that individuals who experience microaggressions could, use, but those were not what organizations could do. And so that was what my research was about. And so, yes, I think I'm an expert on helping organizations mitigate microaggressions because it is, it's up to the leaders to address. And the leaders, and by leaders, I mean, the actual leaders of the organization, but also HR to acknowledge that microaggressions occur and then to address them, because it is all about organizational culture and climate. If you don't stop these behaviors, it is bad for the climate and it's bad for the organization. And that translates into the business, to customers, but also profits, and just everything that makes up the organization. So
yeah. Well, I think you're an expert. I know you're an expert, and this is why we have you here on the Black Doctor Talk podcast, because we want to make sure that we have the people who are experts in their fields sharing with others. So this is very, very important. So let's go to another lane of a career that you're in as associate professor. Did you ever see yourself being an educator?
Yes, I think I did. Once I graduated from college, I think that was something I wanted to do at some point in the future. And so I started really initially, I earned one of my certifications, and so I was working at Catholic University, and so they said, oh, we need someone to teach a certification class. Can you help? And so that's how I started. And then they transitioned me to teaching other HR courses. And so I worked at that university for 2 years. And then my job demands were just too high. And so I stepped back and then applied to UMGC. And, a couple of years later, they contacted me because they had a class. And I was really excited about it because I do like, working with students. I think it's important for HR students to understand that, you get the book knowledge, but you also need to know what really happens in the workplace. And you can hear that from people who have worked in the workplace in human resources. So I think that's very important. So I talk to my students about, well, the book talks about this, and here's some examples, from the news.
Yeah.
Of HR gone bad or organizations gone bad, but and what we can do. So I teach human resources, and I also teach organizational communication, because those are both in the HR program, and I think they work hand in hand because we do need to understand how to communicate at all levels of the organization.
So question. In all this great work, what is going to be your legacy? Because you're doing some amazing things out there. What do you want your legacy to be?
That's a good thing. I would say that I was dedicated to improving workplace experiences for all people, but specifically for marginalized employees. And I try to do that by, acknowledging those experiences that we have, that marginalized people have. I mean, we do have them, but acknowledging, the negative experiences, but also trying to provide opportunities. I have mentored direct reports, and just shown them, how they, because your reputation is very important, how they can, make sure that they maintain a professional relationship, but also not to let, other people's issues, get them down. And microaggressions, okay, what you're experiencing is a microaggression, or what you experience. And this is how, you can overcome that. So I think that's my legacy. I definitely want the workplace to be better for people of color as a whole, because it has not always been a good place for us. It can be soul crushing.
Yeah. You said the word, and I don't know why this just triggered something for me, but I want to ask you this question. When we use the word professionalism now, and we think about these new generation of employees that we're working with and serving, how does that make your work a little bit more difficult in this age of being so woke, where people are walking into environments being authentically themselves, in the way they dress, in the way they speak, in the way they interact? How has that been challenging, or has it been challenging?
It hasn't been challenging for me. I can tell you, I have a young employee. She is 28, and I think she is just amazing, showing up as herself. I mean, and I laugh every day by something that she says. It's just her, and I'm laughing because I'm just excited that she can show up as herself, because that was not what I could do, 30 plus years ago. And so, yeah, I am happy. And I've worked with other young people of different nationalities, and they're showing up, that's who they are. and it's positive. So I see like hope, and in their eyes, that yes, they can be who they are.
Yeah.
And there's just opportunity for them to grow in the organization. And I think organizations need to understand and appreciate us all for our differences, our unique experiences, our opinions, etc. And so the young people are going to change. They're going to change the workplace.
Yeah,
So
most definitely. I think when you guys in HR go out and look for talent, and you have to be open to realize that talent is packaged so differently now. They may not show up in a suit and a tie or a nice two-piece skirt and jacket and a nice blouse. It may come in a polo and some khakis, right? With a couple of piercings and tattoos attached to it.
So it's funny that you say that, because years ago I worked for a different agency, a human services agency, and I remember one of the directors saying she was just surprised that applicants were showing up in like jeans and they didn't have a suit. And I actually said to her, this is before I started school, I said to her, you need, basically you need to manage your expectations. These people are applying for a job that pays $13.95 an hour. Are they going to need a suit for that job? No, they're not. It's a manual job. You're assuming a lot of things based on your own experiences and your family situation. You're assuming that this person knows that they're supposed to wear a shirt and tie to an interview. You're assuming they have it.
Right.
You're assuming that they have role models who are going out to work every day wearing a suit or a shirt, tie, and pants. You're assuming these things, and those are wrong assumptions. And that's basically, it was unconscious bias, and you really need to think about the job that you're hiring for and who's qualified.
Yeah.
And that's all you need to focus on, not what they wear. It's not important.
Right.
So.
Wow. So
Yeah.
you're already doing that work, having those courageous conversations early on.
Right. And it's again, unconscious bias gets us in a lot of trouble.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yes. So with all the things you're doing, what's next for you? What do you see yourself transitioning into?
So I think, I went back to school because I really wanted to, later on in my retirement, probably continue to teach. And so that was, I wanted to work with students on the graduate level, which you need a terminal degree to do that. But I know, so I will continue to teach and broaden who I teach. But the other thing is, I am, needing to really focus on my business, get my website set up and all those types of things, and secure more clients. And so I think that's what I'm going to be working on, over the next, 6 months or so. Just those two things, just working on the business and completing the contract with this one client, but then getting other clients.
Yeah. Well, I know that the Black Doctoral Network Conference is coming up here in my backyard in Chocolate City 2, Atlanta, Georgia. And I know that you're excited because you're going to be participating in a panel discussion. So
yes.
I want to talk about how excited you are about that.
I am very excited. This will be my first panel presentation. And so, really, so the first in-person conference as well that I have attended. So I'm excited about that and going to Atlanta. Yeah, just excited, just very excited about it, somewhat nervous, but, I'll show up, I'll be okay.
Yeah. Well, we're excited to have you. I can't wait to actually see you in person. I will definitely be there, and I will be attending your session to support you and get some great information. So if there is somebody out there who is like, I'm thinking about going to the conference, but I'm not quite sure, what would you say to them?
I think it's just definitely important to come to the conference. It is another growth opportunity, and we are lifelong learners. It doesn't stop when you earn your doctorate. And I think it's important, the work that BDN does, and the conference is going to be an awesome experience, for an opportunity for us to learn. So
that's going to be great. So again, I'm excited. I want to thank you for joining me today. And I just have to say, I love your peaceful energy.
Oh, thank you.
I love the way you present yourself. It is so soothing. And I'm just sitting here listening to you. And I'm thinking if she was my HR director, I would be in her office every day just to sit and extract from what she's giving off, because it's so kind, it's so authentic, it's so relational, but there's a caring aspect of it. And if you don't mind me saying this, there is a spiritual component to the way that you show up in the world. And so thank you
Yes.
for just owning it, and believing in it, and then demonstrating that in the flesh. I really appreciate that.
Thank you so much. It has been nice meeting with you and talking with you about, my research and just life in general. So,
Well, Dr. Green, I want you to share with our viewers and listeners where they can go to learn more about you and the work that you're doing.
so right now I'm just on LinkedIn, and so you can look me up at Dr. Maria Green, and that's it. Eventually, I will have my website launch, and you'll be able to find out more about the work that I'm doing as a consultant.
Well,
Thank
guys,
you.
go right now. Stop what you're doing. Go to LinkedIn, and we want you to go and follow Dr. Green. And while you're over there, go ahead and follow BDN on LinkedIn and all of our other social media accounts. We would love to share and connect with you. But until then, guys, the episode is over. I hope that you have enjoyed it. I hope you picked up some nuggets from Dr. Green, because she definitely dropped some. Guys, I will be back next time with another amazing guest as always. Thank you guys for tuning in. But like I always like to say, be safe, be blessed. Peace. I'll see you soon.